Hey, Freddy with CJ Off-Road. The F-150 Raptor from the factory is already an absolute monster off-road and looks absolutely killer. But many Raptor owners want to level the front of their truck for more clearance and an even better look. So today we're going to show you probably one of the easiest and most cost-effective ways to level your Raptor by installing these coil spring perch collars. These coil spring perch collars are made of 6061 bowed aluminum right here in the USA, and they mount under the front spring perch to lift the front of the truck 1.5 inches, making it level with the rear. It's designed to work with the factory Fox 3.0 shocks and retains the factory bump travel, so today we're going to install them on our 2017 F-150 Raptor. Tools you'll need for this installation: a lift and a jack, or a jack and jack stands, 3/8 ratchet, inch-pound torque wrench, breaker bar, a very powerful impact gun, 30mm socket, 27mm socket, 10mm socket, 8mm socket, 3/16 hex key, 18mm wrench, 21mm wrench, a pry bar, marker, sledgehammer, and a very heavy-duty spring compressor tool. With the wheel removed, the first thing you're going to do is remove the brake lines. There's a 10mm bolt here, a 10 here, and then an 8 right here. Remove the sway bar end link by holding the top stud with an 8mm socket, then loosening the nut with an 18mm wrench. Remove the tie rod with a 21mm socket. Then you might have to hold it with a 10mm socket while you loosen it with a 21mm wrench. Then remove the 3 18mm nuts on top of the strut. They're hard to see, but I promise they're there. It is now time to loosen the lower shock bolt. This can be very difficult. You're going to need a 27mm socket on the bolt and a 30mm socket, a deep 30mm socket on the nut. This is torqued extremely tight from the factory. You will need power tools. It's very tight. Remove the 18mm nut on the upper control arm. Now don't remove the nut just yet. Leave it on, hit the control arm with a hammer, break it loose, then remove the nut. Remove the lower shock bolt. Just to make things a little easier when reinstalling this, I'm going to mark the strut tower and the strut, just so I know exactly where they go, so there's no questioning it. I'm going to slightly loosen the lower control arm bolts just to make it a little easier for it to go down to remove the strut. Get a pry bar underneath the strut. We have the strut out, it's on our table now. We're going to put it in our compressor to compress the spring and get the collars on. Once you compress the spring enough, there'll be some gap here, and you can hammer the perch down and get the collar on. Then these will fall right out. Remove the bolts from the collar. Get the collar in the ridge. It's nice and secure. Then reinstall the screws with some thread locker. Once both screws are in, tighten them evenly to 75 inch-pounds. We can now decompress the spring. Make sure you do this nice and slow. Don't do it too fast. It's very important you do it slow so it decompresses nice and easily, doesn't break anything, and doesn't hurt you. It's ready to go back in the truck. You can reinstall the shock. Make sure your lines mark up. Mine were off and I had to go back and recompress the spring and readjust everything. So once you get your marks lined up, you can reinstall it. You can install the top 3 nuts on the strut, but don't tighten them yet. It's going to make it a little bit easier if you leave them loose so you can install this big bolt on the bottom. Once this is in, you can tighten the ones up top. Reinstall the tie rod. Reinstall the nut onto the sway bar end link. Place a jack underneath the lower control arm to lift it up so you can connect the knuckle to the upper control arm. Reinstall the two 10mm bolts. Then the 8mm bolt. Get everything tightened up, repeat the process on the other side, then your installation's finished. Our leveling kit is installed, our truck's sitting nice and flat now, it looks absolutely awesome. It's important to note when doing this you really need a heavy duty spring compressor. I wouldn't trust the ones you can get from your local auto parts store. The springs on this Raptor are really strong. Also, you're probably going to need a really powerful air gun. An electric impact probably won't do the job. You're going to need a nice powerful air gun. But other than that, installation's not too bad. It's going to take you about 3 to 4 hours, and before you know it, you'll be heading off road.